Hello, this is Archie Dunlop with Talking Astrology with Archie on Sunday, March the 5th, 2023. Today I do want to continue talking about double murderer Alex Murdaugh. There's a lot of interesting stuff in his chart, and I think he tells us something about what happens when Geminis go bad. But before I talk about him, I want to discuss what's going on today astrologically. Well, I should point out that Saturn is very close to moving into Pisces. Technically, it's at 29 degrees, 47 minutes Aquarius. So we might feel that something is coming to an end. Saturn is about to leave its sign, and things are going to be very different when it's in Pisces. So, what does that mean? From a political point of view, it's interesting that in America, Saturn traditionally rules the Democratic Party and Jupiter rules the Republican Party. Now, Saturn is strong in Aquarius. So it may be that when Saturn moves into Pisces, the political dynamics of America start to change. It's not that the Republicans are going to get stronger, it's more that the Democrats are going to get weaker. You know, their fundamental staying power that perhaps we saw in the last congressional elections, White House controlled by the Democrats, and so on, will be starting to fade. I mean, I know they've already got problems, but I think the problems for the Democrats will overall get worse. We might also consider the possibility that with Saturn in Pisces, you know, there are going to start to be emotional challenges, well, for the world at large, that it hasn't really got to grips with. At the moment, it's trying to deal with other challenges. I mean, with Saturn in Aquarius, I suppose it's the challenge of how do you deal with technology, how do you deal with cryptocurrencies, how do you deal with the modern world, because the modern world is getting really over the top. But that's more of a broad matter and doesn't say much about the specifics of today, which is a Sunday. The most important thing going on today is the fact that the moon continues its movement through Leo, and it's moving towards an opposition with Saturn. I'm not convinced that's going to be great. As Sunday progresses, we're going to feel that, you know, the restrictions are getting stronger. You know, we're going to be, you know, worrying about tomorrow, Monday. And, you know, we're not going to be happy campers as the day progresses. And in terms of relationships, you know, the moon being opposition Saturn, this could be a problem, especially if you're in a relationship where there is a clear demarcation of roles. If one of the partner is very much a Saturn figure, the authority figure, the older figure, the person who knows what they're doing, and the other party, represented by the moon, is less mature, is younger, tends to be more careless, then there's going to be friction. You know, there's going to be a situation where the authority figure is causing problems. And I suppose that's not just about relationships. It's in any relationship where there's a difference, an age difference. That could be difficult as the day progresses. So watch out for that. And, you know, if you're worried, you don't have to spend the day in the company of other people. You can spend the day alone. As far as other things are going on, well, not a great deal there. We're continuing to feel that something has to give, as I was saying yesterday. And I would just suggest that you look forward to tomorrow, because I don't know. I don't think today is going to be great for most of us. Now, going back to Alex Murdaugh, I talked about his chart and I mentioned the fact that he's got a lot of planets in Gemini. Now, every sign has got the capacity for doing bad stuff. Now, with Murdaugh, he has got so much stuff in Gemini. I mean, it's untrue. I mean, he's got the Sun in Gemini, he's got the Mercury in Gemini, he's got Venus in Gemini, he's got Mars in Gemini. So he's going to have all of the attributes of a Gemini and all the problems of being a Gemini. And I was listening to the judge sentencing him, and it was quite a powerful speech, remarks made by the judge. And one thing a judge was saying to Murdaugh is that, he's convicted a lot of people, he's sentenced a lot of people, but he says he never found out, or never got a confession, so to speak, as to what actually happened when they did the crime. What was actually going through someone's mind when they pulled the trigger or whatever. And I thought that was quite a profound thing to say, and I think we should be trying to work that out when we look at Murdaugh's chart. And one thing about Geminis is that they are, can be, somewhat schizoid. I mean, I don't say schizophrenic, I say schizoid. A schizoid is about being able to separate one's thoughts and one's feelings, separating one set of actions from another set of actions. And it has been said about Alex Murdaugh that he could potentially be two different people. I mean, as I said, I don't mean that in a schizophrenic sense, more in a schizoid sense. And perhaps one aspect of him doesn't take responsibility for the other. Now, he has denied killing his wife and his son, but he's been convicted of this. So perhaps as a Gemini, he's got a powerful story in his head about why he didn't kill his wife and son, even though he did kill them. So that would be interesting. And Marilyn Monroe, who was a Gemini, when she was asked what was it like to be a Gemini, she said that it was rather like being, I think she said that it was rather like being Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Have I got that right? The doctor and the Mr. But yeah, being two people in one place. And that's very much what we got with Murdaugh, with that massive pile up in Gemini. And to emphasize what I was saying yesterday about Neptune, I said that he had Neptune on the Mars-Saturn midpoint. He didn't just have Neptune on the Mars-Saturn midpoint, he had Neptune on the Sun-Saturn midpoint and Neptune on the Venus-Saturn midpoint. And I think you're dealing with a huge amount of frustration there. Someone really angry and trying to deal with things going wrong and dealing with it through, I think through drugs. And going back to why he pulled the trigger, I think that perhaps the part of him that pulled the trigger he's not consciously aware of, and I would not be surprised, given the Neptune on the Mars-Saturn midpoint, that he was under the influence of drugs when he did what he did. Plus, I discussed some aspects between Saturn and Uranus. I think he had this strange combination of being depressed, I think, because Saturn was making an 150-degree aspect to his Mercury. Mercury is the way we feel. So when Saturn is 3/8 of the circle from one's Mercury, one's feeling down about the world. And then he had Uranus making a sesquiquadrate to his Mars. Now, Mars is about anger. Mars is about how we, how we assertively express our feelings. And so you put Uranus hitting his Mars. There's the anger to deal with the depression, and somehow his wife and his son were right there, and they got shot. And that seems to be what was going on. It was Saturn and Uranus making that aspect, and that was the final trigger. That was the final trigger on the day. But I do think he's probably being a Gemini. Remember that Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing. I think when he denies it, in some ways he perhaps feels he's right to deny it, because the person he's talking about, if you look at things from a schizoid point of view, the person he's talking about didn't actually do it. It was the other person that did it. It was the other aspect of his personality that did it. Remember, he's got Moon in Pisces. Gemini is a kind of logical sign. It's not doesn't in itself fly off the handle. But he's also got the Moon in Pisces. You would have expected at the age of 54 he would have grown out of his Moon in Pisces, but maybe not. Particularly when that Moon in Pisces was opposition Uranus. Just suddenly there's a blast of temper, just completely overrode the Gemini logic, and there was a tragedy. Anyway, I've said enough about Alex Murdaugh, who's now been given, I believe, 2 life sentences. So I will see you tomorrow, which is Monday.